Welcome to the Silicon Valley Mindset. I am calling in from Silicon Valley here in California coast, and hence it's early morning for me. But really excited to meet this community, and I look forward to having a fun session with you guys. So with that, I will first introduce about myself. I am currently a fractional CPO, that's a Chief Product Officer, and a storyteller, because the role of product requires that I work with a lot of different collaborators and stakeholders, and therefore storytelling is central to that work. I've spent 17 years in product management and have lived through 25 product launches. I say lived through on purpose. And obviously lots of stories delivered in that time about products, about our vision, about where we're going, and rallying stakeholders along the way. I've worked at small companies, not listed here, but larger companies too, like Microsoft, Atlassian, SunPower. And the most recently, I'm working with a blockchain company, OMG Network, last year. And now I have various clients where I coach them. So what I do is I do storytelling class for product leaders. I do product coaching for C-suite members on how to take a service company and turn it into a product company, on how to take a product company and build product-led growth, for example. So various forms of product coaching depending on the stage and size of the company. And then I also do workshop for teams, most popular workshop being the product storytelling workshop, and a new one that's coming out, which is the product market fit experiment workshop. So that's me in a nutshell. I love to get to know you over the course of this session. And let's start with what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about what is the Silicon Valley mindset, and then take a pause and workshop that and understanding, okay, how do we adopt that mindset here in Algarve? Then we'll have a second section, which is about building unicorns with product-led growth. So, you know, in Silicon Valley, we always talk about how do you invest in a unicorn, build a unicorn, turn your company into a unicorn. So we understand, okay, what is the dynamic behind that? And then we'll also workshop that and figure out how do we take some of those concepts and leverage those in your own business. And hopefully we'll have some time in the end for questions also, and that should wrap up our session. This diagram I'm showing you is the world's most valuable companies and their market cap. And the light blue here on the left side of the circle are all tech companies. So tech is starting to really grow as a large segment, as you can see, in the last 2 decades. And about 70% of the ones in blue are tech brands that are born in Silicon Valley. So a question you might ask here is, well, why are they all born in Silicon Valley? What is it about the environment here, the people and the culture here that nurtures technology so well? So I want you to raise your hand or drop it into the chat and say, I have been, if you have ever lived in Silicon Valley. Anyone lived? California, Northern California? Nope, nobody lived here. How about if you visited? How many people have visited? Just say I have. Put it in the chat and say I've visited. Nope, nobody visited. Miguel has visited. Miguel, are you still with us? You got a self-report that you visited. Okay, so Miguel has visited. Great. Yeah, he confirms that he has visited. It's true. Great. So what are some words you would use to describe Silicon Valley then, Miguel? Give me a word you would describe Silicon Valley with. And while you think about that word, I'm going to talk about where it is. So, okay, Silicon Valley is considered the part of California that's between San Francisco and San Jose down here. And I live right around the middle there, near Palo Alto on the map there. And this whole area is called Silicon Valley because Intel and AMD and various silicon companies, chip companies, actually started here a long time ago. I would say about 30, 40 years ago at this point. And they coined the term Silicon Valley because computer chips are made from silicon. And then over the course of time, that evolved into now a lot more software companies. So the name originally came from when we were really building out the basics, the foundation of computing, which is the silicon chip. And it's very weird to live in Silicon Valley. So my background is I grew up in, well, before I show you that, I grew up in Canada. I have spent 10 years in Hong Kong, 10 years in Canada. I've also spent a couple months in Sweden and a couple months in Southern California. And I'll say that Silicon Valley is sort of a weird place. And if you spend a day here or spend 1 year here living here, you'll notice a couple of things that are really peculiar about this place. So for example, the top left here, on a daily basis, I'm invited to a user research session at some tech company. It's like Google, Facebook, some new startup. They want to meet me because they know that I'm using their product and they want to know what my experience is. And that's like every day. So if you want to go to these and they pay you for these, if you want to spend your day doing these, you can. There's just so many of them. On the bottom left, right, that's a console for ordering at a restaurant. You walk into any restaurant in Silicon Valley and they have technology, even from 10 years ago. And every restaurant has a different ordering system because there are so many startups trying to make this system work. So you can try out technology without even trying, right? You're just going to a restaurant and here you are being asked to try new technology that don't always work in the restaurant. And then in the middle, the picture next to that, that's in my hometown. So like I walk around and I see this robot. So there are all these robots walking around because this is the new hot thing, is these autonomous robots that deliver your takeout. So this is a takeout delivery robot that hasn't quite figured out how to cross the railroad tracks yet. So you see it walking around the railroad tracks all the time. They're like programming it there and trying to figuring out how to sense, because that's a really tough problem for a robot, is crossing the railroad tracks. And then, there's two resumes here that I'm showing on the right of the screen. The one on the left is a friend of mine who's in the hospitality business, and she's an established marketer, really strong, has her own series, her own book. And, this is her experience, right? She has spent 20 years at a specific company and now is a board member, VP at various other places. My resume on the far right, you can see that's my LinkedIn profile. It's drastically different. And that's a very typical Silicon Valley background is a couple years here, 2 years here, 1 year there, and a lot of different experiences, some startups, some failed companies that I'm trying to start, and then ultimately doing some consulting. So that's pretty typical, right? Is a resume that looks like that. And I want to show that contrast because that is very different than the rest of the world, the rest of the country, where people are going to different places and working at different places all the time because there is so much option where we live for tech employment that's the case. And that has a profound impact on the way we think. So I'm going to get to that here in a second. But here's another fun one. The rest of the country gets billboards about cars and beer, and we get billboards about relational databases. Not just one. There's so many of these. There are, Cisco and MongoDB and like all tech stuff. All our billboards are tech stuff because there's such a high concentration of people who work in this field in our area. So we really think of ourselves as living in a bubble, which is for better or for worse. So if you want to go to an event about a startup or thinking about tech, you can find one. You can find 5 in the Bay Area from San Francisco, San Jose. There's 5 every single day. So you can talk about here, fintech, blockchain. What else? This is all just happening in one day right here. Green tech, farming tech. That's all happening on a random Monday. And then on a random Sunday, there's 10 other ones. So that's the crazy and weird place where I live, right? Is all this high concentration of tech. And Reid Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn, he made this statement, which is that Silicon Valley is a mindset, not a location. It's a mindset, not a location, right? But the location, it does inform the mindset, or I would say the location and the environment in which we live is training us to have certain perspectives of the world that are different. And some of the things that we here take for granted might not be present in other parts of the world. And so this is a very interesting concept. So what is the Silicon Valley mindset, right? What is that influence of living in this kind of different bubble that we're in? What is that influence causing us to do here? So there are a lot of different opinions, of course, of what is the Silicon Valley mindset. I've condensed them into this summary for you. And before I get into the mindset piece of it, I want to talk about the side-by-side, which is the environment, right? What is the environment causing this mindset? So the environment, of course, is one, we have a mobile workforce, right? I just showed you, my background versus an equivalent person out on the Midwest in the US, right? Our background's very different because the workforce moves around. There's a tipping point of talent concentration here, right? I can walk to my local Starbucks, stand in line, and the person in front of me and the person behind me are both engineers working at different companies, right? So if I want to strike up a conversation and get to understand a little bit behind the scenes of how things are done, what the operations are, how do they think about things, mindsets, right, of how they ship product, I can have that conversation standing in line at a Starbucks. So it's a very interesting concentration of these ideas that are happening here. And you can imagine, when people go from one company to another, they're now cross-pollinating this knowledge of how things are done into another company. So those are the first two environmental factors. And then there's the 3, 4, and 5, which are related also, which is the culture of acceptance of failure as a path to success. Now, there's a bit of failure theater, I would say. Sometimes you would see where people are like, oh yeah, we're celebrating failure. Failure is as heartbreaking and tough for us as it is for anybody else, right? And failure is not something that people necessarily want to put on their resume or tell everybody. But there is a culture of acceptance that failure then leads to eventual success if we can learn from those lessons. And so, as a culture, we're working on it, but I think we are getting better and better at how do you frame failure? How do you set up yourself to take failure and put it on a path to success? Then, this cannot be done in silo. We do have the benefit of fail tolerant capital, right? So we do have startups that have a lot of injection of money that says, okay, go try things. I don't need you, your company, to pay all my bills, because there's an expectation. If you look at the stats, 75% of venture capital are invested in the companies that fail. But the 25% that invested into companies that are successful, those companies become so successful that they cover the cost for all the failures in their portfolio. And that's very important to know, because that's how a VC thinks about investment is, I'm going to take a bunch of bets and a bunch of them will fail. And that, I think that mindset is very unique, right? Where, it's very hard for capital to go into a very unsure bet. But the fact that there is capital going into less sure bets means we have the buffer for us to build this culture of failure as a path to success. It's totally not free, right? It's not that we just think this way because, it's somehow magical that we're thinking this way. It's because we have this environment that nurtures it. And then number 3 and number 4 creates this growth mindset, right? So people cultivate that growth mindset thinking, okay, it didn't work the first time around, but I can try again, and I can try again. And you see people's backgrounds, and it's like that. It's like, oh, they tried this thing and didn't work out, so they went to a different company and tried something else. And then they tried to start their own company and didn't work out, so now they went, to this other initiative. And that's a personal growth mindset, which is very important as a foundation for setting up organizational growth mindset and having your organization think that way. These are some images that support what I said, right? Like the resume piece on the far right, supporting the mobile workforce, the tipping point talent. The new image here is the amount raised by zip code. So, next to the resume image is one about all the different areas and the capital that is available in this area to run these experiments, to try and fail, but then be successful later. Now, there are two groups here. One is the first group of environment, right? Mobile workforce, tipping point, talent concentration. Those two environmental factors cause us to have this mindset of being able to cross-pollinate ideas, right? So the mindset is ideas are not sacred. Ideas are meant to cross-pollinate. So if I have an idea, I will share it. I write a blog post. If I have a way of doing operations or building my business that is unique and great, I share that, because then we all grow together. So this idea of cross-pollinating ideas is really coming from this foundation of people moving around, and there's a high talent concentration here. The other three, 4, and 5 here on the bottom contributes to this other mindset, which is the support for turning failures into growth. So like I said, it's not, you can't just, if you're a single person living on an island with people who don't feel this way, it's going to be very hard to continuously fail. But if you're surrounded by people who accept your failure as a path to growth, then it's much easier to accept it. And so there are these environments are very important. I want to talk to them in concert, because sometimes people just talk about mindset, but it's really this environment that's cultivating this mindset. And I think that's important to know. So what we're going to do now is take a poll of how you feel your community is on the spectrums of the mindset. And keeping in mind, it's not one side is correct or the other side is correct, right? It's just where your community is and how they think about it, given the environment that they have been saturated in. So go to this link for me, productmaestro.com, and I'll put it here in the chat as well, so you can quickly go to it. And take the poll, and then I'll reveal to you what the results are of this poll. So let's take a minute to do that. Oh, I'm starting to see some responses. Excellent, excellent. Seven responses. Good, good. 9 responses. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see the results here. Portion of screen. Here we go. All right, 13. I think we're 14. So we're starting to settle here. So as you can see, how would you rate your business community's ability to foster cross-pollination of ideas? Some folks think we're really high, and some folks think we're on 3. So there's a difference in opinion here, which is very interesting. So maybe there are pockets of places where cross-pollination of ideas is happening, and we can take those learnings. The folks who filled out 3 here, when we do the workshop coming up next, if you can split yourself up into different groups, that would be great. And that way, we can discuss how we can improve this cross-pollination of ideas. And then the other one is tolerance for failure, right? There's a general low setting here, 3s and 5s, the highest. And then growth mindset is actually, folks rate themselves very high here. So that's very interesting. Now, like I said, it's not correct to have growth mindset or fixed mindset, right? It just creates different behavior. It's not necessarily correct to have high tolerance for failure or low. It's just, again, your environment and you and what has given you success, right? If you're culturally less tolerant to failure, that could be because it was built up from a number of cultural reasons that's leading people to feel this way. And genetically, we're programmed to avoid failure, right? Because it can be deadly. If the one time you fail to avoid the lion, that could be a really bad situation. So we're going to explore how we can increase tolerance for failure, I would say. We're going to explore how we can increase the ability to cross-pollinate ideas. And then your community can decide whether that is something that you guys would want, right? Do you want these type of mindsets in your community? Is that going to be helpful for what goals you're trying to pursue in your community? So let's see. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to share screen again. Actually, I'm going to keep it simpler and share this part. Okay, so we're here. Yep, so we're going to do this workshop now. We did the poll, and now we're going to do our first workshop. And the workshop is this. So we're going to, can you still see my screen? Or is it?
Yeah, we can see it.
I need to zoom in a little bit. Here we go. I can move the.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set up these breakout rooms now. And you're going to choose the breakout room yourself. Okay. So there's going to be 1A, 1B, 1C. There's going to be 2A, 2B, 2C. Those are the rooms. So the room ones are going to work on pollination of ideas. And room 2 is going to work on turning failure into growth. So you're going to self-select into these groups based on your interest. I want no more than 5 people per room. So if you see the room fill up, then jump to the next room because there's multiple room 1s and there's multiple room 2s. And you can control coming back into the main room anytime, as well as jumping into another breakout room. So if you are in a room and suddenly there's filling out with people, some of you can jump out and go to a different room, okay? So what you want to do when you get into the room is you want to appoint one person to keep time. Have that person set a timer for 5 minutes. And this 5 minutes is going to be quiet time for everyone to write their ideas. So you're going to write your ideas on see this bit.ly link here. Go ahead and type that into your computer. That will take you to a worksheet, which is this one, Silicon Valley Mindset worksheet. And it has the same instructions are listed here for your benefit. So 1A is going to jam on this, right? You're going to type ideas together right here. Just go ahead. I'll add there's a 1B, right? So if you're in group 1B, then you would write it here. And then same, 2A, you would write it here. And then 2B, you would write it here. And you would look at the seed question. So this is the seed question for 2A, which is how might you, your company, or the Algarve community as a whole build this support for turning failures into growth? Silicon Valley's, our solutions are, cultural acceptance, access to fail-tolerant capital, growth mindset. It's going to be different for your community, right? But the goal is, okay, how do we get to this building the support? So you should have different answers because, access to fail-tolerant capital might not be the first thing that you happen to have, right? So then what are some of the other ways you can get to this goal here if that's a goal you want to get to as a community later on? And then same thing for cross-pollination ideas. What are some environmental factors that you have as a benefit or that you can build in order to create this cross-pollination of ideas? Okay, and then at the end, you will appoint one person to be a spokesperson, and that person will speak on behalf of the group and share back some of the ideas with the wider group. We'll have 25 minutes for your group to do this. So 5 minutes of quiet time to write things down. And then go round table. Each person gets 3 minutes to talk a little bit about their ideas. That helps foster more ideas because another person listening to the first person talk about their idea might have, oh, I have this other idea. If you have this other idea, don't interrupt, just write it down. And then when it's your turn, you can present that idea. But really quick, right? Like all ideas are good ideas. This is improv rules. Yes, and, right? If you've ever done improv. All ideas are good ideas. Write it down. We're not trying to censor here. We're trying to build a lot of ideas together. So is the instructions clear? Are there any confusion? If you have a question, now's a good time.
Can you put the link to the document on the chat, Connie, please?
Here we go. Yes, I will put it in the chat too. I'm gonna stop share. Can find here. There we go. That's the link. I'm going to trigger the breakout rooms now. So you should be able to pop into a room that you choose. And there's 15 of us, so probably just 3 rooms will do it for 5 each. 3 or 4 rooms. 5 max, so. All right. So you can self-assign to rooms at this point. Are you able to go into a room? I don't see anyone jumping to a room yet, so let me know. Are you able to see the breakout rooms on your screen? Ah, I see one person go in. Cool. Vanessa went to a room.
Ok.
Isto diz que eles não foram atribuídos. Será que temos nós que atribuí-los?
Óbvio, as pessoas escolherem. Espera aí que eu vou lá.
É que isto diz que dá para eles escolherem.
Não, a gente força.
Não, já há 4 numa sala.
Sim, mas isso é a malta que na sign.
Eu meti no Signal, queres que eu meta tipo assim um post nas redes sociais a dizer já começou, não sei. Ok.
Não, porque não serve de nada, porque as pessoas depois não têm o acesso. Okay. Eu venho já. Malta ainda está.
Olá.
Olá.
Eu estou aqui um bocadinho fora que aterrei agora. Portanto, depois se me puderem fazer aí uma pequena introdução, agradeço. O que é para fazer que eu não estou completamente a leste.
Ok, então vou pôr, será que isto tem aqui um chat? Tem. Posso pôr aqui, mas isto é o chat do grupo. Então, aqui no chat do grupo, Mónica, há aqui um link do Bitly que podes clicar e tem as instruções.
Exato, está aqui.
Pronto. Olá.
Olá.
Estamos aqui a ler as instruções.
Ok, portanto temos 5 minutos.
Ela deve vir agora visitar a malta e ver o que é que a gente está a fazer. Ora, nós vamos falar
então,
sobre as ideias de como crescer a partir do fracasso, não é?
Estão a contar já os 5 minutos, não é? Das 16h11.
Portanto, nós somos o B.
Ok, quem é que quer ser a porta-voz? Eu dispenso.
Eu ia dizer, se pudesse ser alguém daqui, agradecia, porque, pronto, como estou numa posição de host, é um bocado mais chato se houver alguma coisa para resolver. Mónica, porta-voz?
Ai, não, então eu acabei de chegar aqui e nem sequer sei o que é que vamos fazer.
Não, basicamente ela pediu para nos fazermos 2 tipos de reflexão
Isso do grupo?
Sim, e basicamente nós é
Sobre?
pensarmos no como é que nós podemos tornar o fracasso em sucesso na nossa comunidade aqui de tecnológica no Algarve.
Pensando como é que podemos nos tornar num fracasso.
Como é que podemos tornar os nossos fracassos em
Sucessos.
Em sucesso, nossos insucessos em
Ok.
Pois é uma ideia que nós já temos discutido e que é uma das coisas que nós estamos a pensar promover, que é uma noite de partilha, ou uma tarde, mas tornar isto uma coisa assim frequente entre os empresários, de partilharem mesmo o insucesso, ou seja...
Mas estamos a falar disso, Vanessa, estamos a falar disso a nível tecnológico ou no geral?
Tecnológico e não só, no geral. Nós concretamente vamos convidar, nós Algarve Tech Hub, vamos convidar empresas de tecnologia. Sim. Mas é isso que estamos a pensar fazer, ou seja, promover a partilha dos fracassos. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
Hi. We were just discussing.
We are still sharing some ideas.
Okay, very good. Can I have you do this? Rather than discuss, let's start by writing down our ideas. And that's deliberate because then everybody can share at the same time, right? So go to the document and under 1A or 1B, I guess do it 1B because that's the name of the room. So put down your ideas where it says idea 1, idea 2. And can someone set a timer? Who can set a timer in here?
I can set it.
Okay, very good. So set a 5-minute timer and then everybody writes. So, I mean, if everybody stopped writing, you can stop the timer early. But give everyone 5 minutes to just get ideas on the page. Then you can respond to it and discuss. Sound good?
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Very good.
I'm already writing. So I was saying start doing actually in Germany they call it the fuck up night. So basically it's people sharing how they mess project, companies and such, instead of always talking about the successes. And this is something that we need to promote because people usually just say the good parts but leave the failures out. So the sharing might be a way of enabling the culture of success. I don't know if I will write down the fuck up.
I wrote it up for you. Then you can add details too. So we'll just do 5 minutes of quiet writing time and then do the discussion.
Okay, just one question. Are we group 2B, correct?
You are 1B.
1B.
1B. Oh.
Awesome. All right.
You're already writing, Vanessa. Are you already writing, Vanessa?
Yeah, I'm writing. Yeah. But if can I ask you to share with the rest of the group then? I write. You share. Please, Ines.
Why me?
Because I know you can do it pretty well and easily.
Okay. Allocate budgets.
But everybody write your own ideas down. Yes. Okay, cool. I just see one person writing, so nobody's taking notes. Everybody's writing for their own. Okay, cool. Then I'll leave you to brainstorm a little bit and I'll be back in a few minutes.
What else do you think we can do to promote, o que é que vocês acham que a gente pode fazer mais para promover esta questão da cultura do sucesso?
Eu estava a escrever agora, por exemplo, quando a Connie se apresentou, geralmente as pessoas nestas coisas é tipo um TED Talk, apresentam os sucessos, podia haver, por exemplo, uma parte em que apresentavam os fracassos.
Desculpem lá perguntar, é que eu estou aqui a fazer uma confusão. Nós não estamos no grupo do failure, do fracasso, nós estamos no cross-pollination of ideas,
Pois é.
não é? Pois é, daí eu estar a dizer que
Pois é.
era o segundo, mas nós estamos no primeiro, portanto. How might your company or the Algarve communication level? Ok.
Não, mas então isto não dá.
Isto não dá, temos que mudar.
Temos que mudar, então peraí.
Desculpem lá, onde é que vocês estão a ver
Pensava
esse?
que estava no 2B,
É
realmente.
neste link?
É, no último.
É,
Ok.
exatamente. Pronto, então temos que mudar aqui a estratégia.
Então temos, peraí.
E vão escrever aonde? É para escrever.
Então,
É no 1B. Ok, o que é que vocês entendem disto? Ou seja, o que é que o Algarve, o que é que as empresas na comunidade do Algarve podem fazer para haver mais comunicação, mais a partilha de ideias? É isso que vocês entendem deste?
sim. To promote specific, eu posso escrever promote specific events,
Yeah,
to share
knowledge.
knowledge and what kind of partnerships you're looking for.
Ok.
Ok. Sim, em termos, por exemplo, acho que é o que vais dizer, tipo focus group, termos de eventos específicos num determinado tema, é isso que vais dizer?
Sim, tipo, eu acho que a tua ideia é mais no networking, das pessoas começarem a partilhar ideias.
Networking.
Exatamente.
É mais eventos.
É, exatamente, eventos de diferentes áreas, seja tecnologia, marketing, para haver também mais especialização no Algarve.
Uhum.
As pessoas também têm ainda muito o estigma da partilha, com medo têm sempre medo de partilhar. E isso, eu acho que isso é uma coisa que não é só no Algarve, em todo o país. Em Portugal eu noto muito isso, que as pessoas têm muito receio de partilhar, que alguém vai copiar a ideia ou qualquer coisa, quando a partilha é uma coisa espetacular que pode facilmente resolver um problema para nós, alguém já o teve e já tem a solução. Portanto, acho que é muito importante isso.
Outra coisa que se pode fazer é trazer outras empresas.
Uhum.
Empresas de fora que já misturam áreas.
Uhum. Então, ok, vamos por aqui neste.
Eu acho que também podíamos pensar aqui numa criação de uma espécie de plataforma de Q&A, quase que todos nós pudéssemos alimentar, para quem se sinta mais inibido de partilhar em tempo real, mas que também pudesse...
Acho melhor cada uma de nós escrever algumas ideias e depois já debatemos entre todas, que é para alinharmos aqui os chakras.
Quem é que está com o clock? Samantha, quanto tempo é que a gente tem?
50 segundos. Pausei quando descobrimos que não era o tema. Temos mais ou menos um minutinho.
Então, se calhar, como não temos muito mais tempo, se calhar falamos.
É melhor falar, não é?
Sim.
Ok. Então, começamos.
Ok. Então, temos aqui promoção de networking com local companies to share knowledge and promote partnerships, enroll people who fail in company projects, promote specialized events highlighting different areas.
Desculpa, Vanessa, interromper. Aqui é a questão do enroll people who fail on
A
company
gente pode
project.
tirar.
Sim, acho que isto estamos no outro, não é?
Estávamos no outro, sim.
Pode apagar.
Sim, podes. Não fui eu que escrevi. Por isso é que não apaguei. Bring abroad companies to take our companies abroad. Promote the Algarve as a dynamic and attractive destination for investment. Hire workforce with very different backgrounds. Have brainstorm sessions between different departments of the company. Isso também. Create events with pitch decks and specific funding to promote those ideas. Share a platform with where all the companies or persons could feed in a kind of Q&A with problems and solutions for different topics. Informal WhatsApp groups or on different areas. ID train. Develop new talent, career opportunities. Sim. Yeah. Parece-me bastante completo.
Connie, what do you think?
You don't have a sound. You don't have sound, Connie.
You have a good list here. Well done.
Yeah.
You're inspired.
Yeah.
Any insights? Any new ideas that kind of popped out of this session here?
Well, this is pretty much what we're trying to do with Algarve Cup, so it was an easy task. And the amazing thing is that Inês and Monica did know everything about it. So, and we are aligned in the same line of thinking.
Yeah.
But even we have not a Q&A, but we're building we have funds now to build a platform so companies can share information and as well new talent acquirement and stuff like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Ines and Monica, are you part of the organizing group for the Algarve community, or are you entrepreneurs in the community?
No. I work with Miguel at Dengan.
Okay. Got it.
Actually, I'm an outsider. I'm from Alentejo, but I have seen the Algarve as well.
It's the same. Algarve and Alentejo, it's the forsaken lands from the rest of the country. So it's the same. We're neighbors.
Yeah, that's great.
Everything south of Lisbon does not exist. So
Yeah.
That's what they think.
Are you a business owner? Are you a business owner in
Yes.
the region? Yeah.
I have a tourism business on the southwest coast of Alentejo, and I'm also president of a tourism association. But this tourism association has entrepreneurs from the Alentejo and Algarve, so from both areas.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. See, you're already cross-pollinating within Portugal. Ideas train, I added the idea here. And it's to bring people to other places. So you can collect a group of business owners and then bring them to, other places of Portugal, or bring them to Canada or Silicon Valley or Australia or New Zealand, right? Other tech hubs, Singapore, there's a lot of different hubs where people are doing business, and then have somebody there kind of help you visit the companies there, so you can actually cross-pollinate with those and learn like how they think about it and what their kind of assumptions are. It's always fun to visit and see that their assumptions are different than yours. You're like, wait, what? You can do this? And they're like, of course you can do this.
we already submitted a project to the EU asking for funds to do that, and it was approved. So I guess we will have some of the companies do that here. And I was lucky to be in, at least in Spain, in two hubs, and it's amazing just to go there, like the mindset, the way they're organized, like it opens your mind right away.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you're in San Francisco area. Give me a call. Can meet you in person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to Miami, but it's a bit off. I'm going on holidays probably.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But if I go to Silicon Valley, I'm definitely giving you a call.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to close the breakout rooms in a minute. So I will see you back in the main room.
Ok. Agora não percebi se nós temos que apresentar.
Sim, vamos ter que apresentar ao grupo, penso eu. É esse o...
Ok.
Welcome back.
Hello again.
Hello again. Oh, people are still in the rooms. Not everybody has. They're waiting for it to automatically drop them. Okay, just Monica and Antonio. Most people are back. Cool. How was it? Thumbs up, sideways, down.
Fighting.
Fighting. Oh, I like that. That's a new one. Fighting. Lots of ideas generated, I see. I love it. So now you have a document with ideas and you can go execute. That's why I want it written down, you see. Otherwise, nothing happens. All right, so let's have group one. Is your spokesperson back? Can group one walk us through some of the highlights of the ideas? 2 minutes. Who's the spokesperson? Is that you, Vanessa?
Nope.
Nope. Did you appoint one? Did you choose a spokesperson for your room?
Yeah, I believe it's me.
Ines. All right, Ines.
Okay.
It's not democratic. Thank you, Ines.
You're welcome. Okay, so basically we had an interesting chat altogether. Great ideas, I guess. Now, please, Connie, let us know your feedback. So we will try to promote networking with local companies and share knowledge and promote partnerships. Also promote specialized events highlighting different areas from technology to marketing, different areas in the Algarve. Bring abroad companies and take our companies abroad. Also promote the Algarve, not promote, but continue to promote the Algarve as a dynamic and attractive destination for investment. A lot of great work has been done so far. Ideas train, bring a group to other places to do business visits and cross-pollinate ideas with other geographics and companies, so outside their comfort zone. Hire workforce with very different backgrounds, have brainstorming sessions between different departments of the company, create events with pitch decks and specific funding to promote those ideas, sharing platforms where all the companies or persons could feed in a kind of Q&A with problems and solutions with different topics, development of informal WhatsApp groups on different areas, promoting networking, and also develop new talent career opportunities in the destination. So basically, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing back.
You're welcome.
Yeah, any questions for group one from the wider group? Things to build on, you can write on their ideas too. So if you have ideas on top of their ideas, you can add some sub-bullets there. And I understand some of the, go ahead, Miguel.
No, I was going to say, I was not present on the group 1B, but I really like the ideas, and some of them we have been considering them in the Algarve Tech Hub to try and build this in a more innovative region and whatnot. Others we haven't, so we will consider them now. So super cool.
Great.
Yeah,
great.
That's great. Yeah, I heard that number, like half of these are already in motion from the Tech Hub, so that's good job, Vanessa. Yeah. All right. Group two. Spokesperson for group two.
So unfortunately it's me, so you guys will need to put up with me a little bit longer. So
2 minutes, Miguel, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I'll try. It's a lot of text, but how can we support for turning failure into growth? One idea was to organize a set of events called Oh Shit Nights, where we'd have, like, I don't know who gave that name. Was it Yuki? I think it was, or was it you? Who? But it's a very good name. I don't know, was it? But congrats. Write in the chat who has the credit for it. So roundtables every 6 months and examples for about entrepreneurship that found failures on their path and how they transform that into success. Talk about the process of innovation that it requires, try and error, and failure is encompassed within it. So to fail means that you had the courage to start doing something, but I don't think that we don't need to push it too far in these conversations where we put failure as a badge of honor. So that needs to be dosed, in my opinion. There's a bit too much of that, and we don't want to go to the other spectrum, end of the spectrum. Forensics on failures. Then I think this is a super cool one and something that but we kind of considered, but not in this clarity. So how can we financially support seed funding for ideas, for new companies? How much does it cost to fail? Can we afford it? What revenues can we get from it? And give fiscal benefits and incentives to crowdfunding initiatives. Create a fund for seed startup ideas that would potentially mitigate the issue or the fear of failing that much, and incentivize innovation. Create a digital platform where we can share information about these, potentially maybe in the Algarve Tech Hub digital platform on the near future. Create support groups for entrepreneurs, of advisors, mentors, entrepreneurs that could support them when they are failing or failed to move forward after that. corporate level, so incentivize companies to have internal programs where they incentivize like their resources and teams to have a more entrepreneurial approach and like give support to that and create a hall of fame of failures and a book club. So that's it.
Yeah, book club I added at the end. A place where people gather and read. There's a lot of books on this topic, right? So that could be a fun way to get to know other people and think about those ideas. Yeah, thank you for sharing all these ideas here. Lots of options. What is the action plan? Tech Hub's doing a bunch of initiatives from the first group. Are some of these in motion, or are some of these from this conversation worth pursuing and putting into motion?
So yes, for sure. Some of them, as we've said, are already in motion. Others, we should for sure think about them and potentially pursue them.
Awesome. Great. Any reaction to this session that people want to share? What's your was this helpful? Did you incubate some new ideas here? Kind of got it started perhaps, and maybe there's some follow-ups.
Joaquin, were you going to say something?
No, I think we can do a lot of, at least start, right? I don't know in a year's time, if you look back, if we had made a big difference, but if we don't start, then never happens. So yeah, at least the whole shit nights, it can happen really quickly, right? We can get together 10 people that over some period just talks about it, right? That's kind of an easy win. Other ones like seed money, it will take a bit of time to get through, but yeah, we can definitely incorporate it in the Algarve Tech Hub plan for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I like it, Connie.
So, and how do you guys do it over there?
Vanessa, you were asking how do they?
How you guys do it in Silicon Valley?
Oh, how do we do it over here? How do we calculate? Yeah, well, it's the pieces I talked about earlier, right? We happen to have a lot of fail-tolerant capital. I have to start from the top of the deck here. So let's give it a second. Yeah, so we happen to have a lot of fail-tolerant capital. There's a strong growth mindset. We have people cross-pollinating just by going to they work in one company, then they work in another one. That might not be so available, if geographically not all the companies are within commute distance, it's a little harder to do, right? Here you can, within the same block, there's 10 companies. So if you want to switch, you can. And then now with remote working though, that might change things, right? Where you could cross-pollinate much easier in your geography. So yeah, those are some interesting new dynamics, I would say, that are happening now. But yeah, we do have this, weirdness, I say it, right? Because it's not common that most of my friends are engineers at various tech companies. I wasn't trying to, I just happened to be, because those are the people living here. And that just automatically generates this cross-pollination, and this automatically generates this sharing of ideas. So yeah, we're a little bit unique in that way. But that, not to say that you can't foster it, right, in different ways. The right
Sorry, can you mute Joe? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, let's step into our second session. So everybody take a breath, because this is a long session. Let it out. Okay, come back. Let's talk about your business now. So we're going to talk about building unicorns with product-led growth. And this workshop, the first workshop is more focused on the community and the environment in which your business lives. This workshop is going to be focused on your specific business. So we're going to talk about unicorns. You've all heard of unicorns. Product-led growth is powering a lot of these unicorns. It's a business model that has become very popular, and it's allowing businesses to grow in such a fast, scalable way. And we'll talk about that particular dynamic and how you can leverage some of those learnings into your own business. So before we step into it, unicorns, can you drop into the chat for me if you know what I mean by unicorn? Not the definition, just if you know the definition, great. Even if you don't, just even if you know the definition, you don't have to write it out. You can just say, I know what it is. Yes, Bruno, yes, yes. Okay, people know what I mean by even the magical ones. All right, how about product-led growth? If you know what product-led growth is, put PLG. Nobody knows. Nope. All right. So we're gonna learn something here today. Here we go. All right, unicorn is defined as a startup company that's worth over $1 billion. And on the graph here on the right, you can see the companies and their founding dates that have grown to this valuation. And this valuation is unique because these are all still privately held companies. A unicorn is one that basically got to 1 billion super fast, usually within 7 or 8 years, became a unicorn and usually goes public. And the reason venture capital that I talked about earlier, the reason venture capital is able to have 75% of their portfolio fail is because in the 25% that they own that is successful, at least 1 or 2 of those need to be a unicorn. So they're out there looking for unicorns because those are going to pay the bills for everything else. And they can then invest in a number of possible unicorns in their portfolio. The cumulative market cap of public PLG companies, product-led growth companies, is rising over time. So you can see that product-led growth, PLG, is becoming a strong business model that is driving a lot of unicorn go-to-market and a lot of unicorn IPOs. So the reason I talk about those two together is that in recent times, in the last 5-10 years, this has emerged, the product-led growth model has emerged as the business model that's going to drive your company to become a unicorn and to go public. Now, it's not the only one, but it is a very strong one. And that's because of a number of factors that's happening. Technology is enabling people to build products that can be self-serve at scale. And then people, general consumers, people pulling out their credit cards and paying for these services, are getting trained on technology. So they can go in, imagine 30 years ago, if you're trying to sell a technology product, you have to sit down with them and explain how it works. Now you don't. Everybody has cell phone in their pockets. You just download an app and off you go and put in a credit card. So the dynamics of the consumer being trained over time, and as well as the technology being available as a way to deliver your services, has created this business model, which is the product-led growth. And there's a lot of companies who have gone public using this business model. On the tall stack graph, I can tell you Datadog, Slack, those are all in Silicon Valley. PagerDuty, SurveyMonkey, I've driven by those offices. There's a lot of them, half of these, MongoDB, Twilio, Atlassian's Australian, Shopify's Canadian. So it's not just Silicon Valley. Half of the list is, but the other half is actually in other parts of the world. And it's becoming a very popular model, not just for Silicon Valley, but really globally, in order to build very viral, fast rocket growth for the company. And the product-led growth strategy is this. You engage the visitor through marketing, as you would normally. At some point, they sign up for your product on their own. So there's no human touch at all. They go and give their credit card. They look at your pricing, packaging, and they go and give their credit card, or maybe there's no credit card at all. Sometimes they know there's no credit card. You just sign up. You sign up and you play with the product. And then at some point it says, okay, you've played with the product enough, please start paying. And at that point you go into the engagement on the product side. And so what's been happening in the past is that you have sales motion, you have marketing, you have salespeople who work on educating the customer on what your product's about. And then at some point, the customer has to make a decision about buying it or not. Once they buy it, they can use it. That's the traditional model. right? They're not going to come in and play with your product until they have basically decided to buy it. But now it's really flipped, where they're actually in your product and they're using it. They might be using it forever and never pay you a single dime, right? Gaming's like this, actually. For a long time, gaming's like this, and still is. You can play with it, and they may or may not be monetized. In gaming, they are, the viewers might be monetized. In some places where you might be monetized through ads, for example, before the conversion point. But in any case, your product is basically open to people to use until they hit a certain threshold of usage, and then you build them. So the sales model is very different, because now, rather than having salespeople explain to them, or marketing folks creating materials explaining and videos explaining how the product works, is like, no, just going to drop you in, play with it, and then sign up if you love it, right? So the customer's getting value already, even before they start paying your product, and they build this relationship with you and with your brand before they start using the product. Now, this is not super new, right? We know this exists. The earliest known form is you walk in your supermarket or your food market, and someone offers you a sample of their food, of their, sauerkraut, or their, this, I don't know what this is, looks like a fruit tart, right? That they're offering you. So try our product before you buy it. That is a very classic model, actually. But when you overlay the technology on top of it, the ability to track each person individually, the ability to shut off features from people if they're not paying, and then changing that as you need to and experimenting with it, figuring out where the value point is. We talk about something in product called time to value, which is how long it takes a customer or user to get to the point where they're like, aha, this is awesome. This is giving me benefit. I'm going to keep using this product, right? So there's a time from when they learn about you to when they hit that time, that value point. So we talk about shortening that and getting that to be, really tight, so that immediately they get value from you, immediately they stick around, right? So not a completely new concept, but you layer the tech on and it's suddenly much more powerful and much more scalable. So I'm going to take a step back for a second. I know a lot of you run service companies in this group and in this community. So I want to take a step back and say, hey, you have a service company, you're not a product company. And then you might be thinking, okay, product-led growth, that's not going to be relevant to me. And I'm going to challenge that thinking and say, it is still relevant to you in two ways. The first way is that your service delivery can be delivered with a product mindset. And the second way is that you can move from a service to a product company and then build a product-led growth business. The first way is service delivery with a product mindset. So I'm going to give an example that's close to you, which is Grown in Portugal. I looked at the website and they definitely follow the service delivery with a product mindset philosophy. Is Grown in Portugal have a representative here today?
He's part of our association and very close and engaged with the Algarve Tech Hub, but he's not here today. Okay, perfect. This is how they deliver their services. It's in packages, right? On a monthly plan, like SaaS. And they're not, these are going to be, high touch kind of interactions based on what I'm reading here. It's not just, drop into our product and there you go. But they nonetheless put it into bundles. And their bundles have this classic SaaS product checklist, right? You can compare different, they have these kickoff sessions. So they're meetings and they're pitch decks and they're like interactions with people, but they're not just drop into the product and off you go, but they still package it up like a product. And that's the magic, right? Because when you can do this, when you can create a repeatable model, then you have the ability to scale. Because now I don't have to have a conversation explaining, oh, I have a starter plan. It's going to have these things. I have a basic plan. It's like, okay, just read this, pay with it, pay your credit card, and off we go, right? And so the sign up, the sales process is a lot easier, a lot cheaper. And you can put your pricing at a lower price point because they're self-serving on the incoming. So that's the first way, yeah, it's relevant for you as a service company, is you can adopt this mindset immediately. Well, you need to do some work to figure out what your packages are, but you can adopt this mindset relatively quickly in order to
create a more efficient sales process and to take that cost down so that then you can even deliver that cost to your customer on the pricing end. The second way that it's relevant for you is so many businesses have moved from service business to product business and then use product-led growth to turn into really large businesses. And I'll give you two examples right here, both of which are actually not companies in Silicon Valley, but have grown from outside. So the first story is Vidyard. Vidyard is now a $76 million business. It's still considered an early startup, but they have, built the business from a video production agency, and they're based in Canada. So they initially was an agency. It's people editing videos for clients. And after a while, they started seeing a pattern of this unmet need, which was video hosting, management, and sharing was really hard. And they had to do that all over again for each client, right? And so they're like, well, maybe we just sell that as a package. And that's our product, right? Rather than me putting in hours, people, labor, and service, I built this platform and then allow people to self-serve on top of it. And maybe you sell some services on top of that, but there's a platform, there's a core bit that they can just put on a pricing sheet and then you can buy with a credit card, right? So they basically built this business, starting as a service company, moving into a product company, and then use product-led growth. Just, people use it and tell other people about it, and then people use it again. They have a free tier. You can go and you can get a free tier, and you just try it. You never talk to a salesperson, and one day you start paying for it, right? Here's another example, a company that I worked at Atlassian. Australian company, really big. Now it's 76 billion market cap. And they started back in 2002. This is Mike and Scott here. These are the founders. This is there's a picture of them from 2002 when they started the company. And it was an IT services company. They would fix people's IT problems, go around and do that. And then at some point they realized, hey, all of our customers need to do bug tracking. This thing called bug tracking is really starting to take off. There's some products out there. And we build a thing in-house called Jira to help people do that because they want to do it at scale. And they sell it to every customer. So, then they started to pivot. Then they stopped doing IT services and they started focusing just on selling Jira. And now Jira and the rest of Atlassian is, a $70 billion unicorn success, right? So the point is, as a services, a lot of companies are born in the services field because that's when you get close to the customers and you start seeing their problems. So it's a perfect spot to be funded, basically, to build your product idea, right? You're still getting paid in the meantime to do work, but you start seeing the patterns and you start seeing, oh, wow, actually 70% of my customers have the same problem. And if I build a tool for that, I can just put a credit card, payment on it and then just go to a lot more customers that have this problem and have them buy my product. So the product-led growth strategy, like I said, the visitor comes in, they do self-sign up, they try your product. This PQL I want to talk about. PQL means product qualified lead. That's in the funnel there, that blue, that small triangle. Product qualified lead, you might have heard of sales qualified lead, right? Marketing qualified lead. These are basically, sales has decided this person is worth investing more time into because they're likely to buy. That would be a sales qualified lead. Marketing qualified lead, similarly, right? Marketing has decided that this person has done some actions which signals to us that they're ready to buy. And so we want to work more on this person and get them to understand the product and eventually turn into a customer. So product qualified lead is similar, where there are actions they take in the product. And, if you look up PQL on the internet, you'll see there are examples like Slack, for example. For them, a lead is active when they have had 2,000 messages sent back and forth with people, right? Facebook, their product qualified lead is they have 7 friends. If a person has 7 friends, then they're likely to convert into a loyal Facebook user. So 7 friends in the Facebook system, not 7 friends in life, right? So these are the metrics, and it takes a while to figure out, but that's the value point we're talking about. So customers that hit that value point are immediately in the, hey, they're likely to convert, kind of that green button moment. So really interesting way to funnel the people through by having them try your product. And I want to do a comparison here to really clarify how this model is different than the traditional model. So the traditional model, everyone understands, is usually sales-led. You know, they have a whole organization of people. Usually half the company would go and pound the pavement, as they say, and get money to come in, right? Sell the product. And then the other half would build it. So in a sales-led company, you have a lot more. Maybe it's more than half of the people who are selling. In a product-led company, it's actually less. So you have less than half. So more than half of the people are going to be building your product, because the product is actually selling itself in a way, right? And so the way you finance these companies is actually very different. There's all these axes here that I'm going to talk about here. So your go-to-market approach is different. In your sales-led, you're having conversations, so you're focusing top-down, because you don't have enough time to go and talk to the secretary and then talk to the engineer and then talk to the designer and then trying to sell in that way. You're not going to do that. So you're going to sell in from the top. You're going to sell in from the CTO level for your technology, or another C-suite for a different product, and that's going to be the go-to-market. For product-led, we don't do that. We actually go straight to the person who's going to use the product. Your engineer, like Jira, for example, your engineer. Zoom might be the person hosting the meeting, right? You go straight to that person because you can scale it. You're not having a phone call. You're just sending them marketing materials, basically. It's like, hey, Zoom. Or sometimes they're not even selling marketing materials. In Zoom, the way they go, they build their business is you get invited to a Zoom meeting by somebody else who uses Zoom. And suddenly you're exposed to the product. You're using Zoom. And then at some point they come back and say, oh yeah, looks like you've used Zoom. What do you think about it? Come back, right? So there's a lot of bottom-up action. Your time to value has to be very short. So you have to keep shortening that because you don't have a person talking to them. You can't engage in a long relationship. It has to be like, hey, you try it, you feel like it's useful, buy it, right? Deployment. There's a lot of professional software set up on the sales-led model. In the product-led is a DIY, right? And this is connected with the product positioning. So in the last column, you have to be very use case focused because you don't have time to explain everything and it could be complicated. You have to make it very simple. And so it's very hard. There's certain type of services and products where the product-led is actually not going to work for them because of the nature of that product being very complex, in which case you need an interaction with a human in order to understand fully how that product will work for them. But if you can distill your product, your complex offering down to a very specific use case, and you can mostly do that. It takes some time. In the beginning, it's hard. But as you understand the use case, you can be like, oh, you know what? A lot of people are doing X. They're just coming in, they're doing X and nothing else. And then at some point they add Y and they add Z. I have a fintech product example, right? I was talking to a client of mine, and they have 3 different fintech products. One for loans for students, for education, one for housing loans, and one for professional loans, like business loans. So, it's very specific. They're all loans, actually. And you could actually go in and say, oh, yeah, I have a loan, and I can do this kind of loan or that kind of loan. And that's very complex, and you need to talk to a human to understand. But they've broken it down over time, be like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to have a student loan. And that's very simple. You can only do this. You can only take out enough for your education. And it's going to be a payback plan of 20 years maybe. And it's fixed. Everything's fixed. But it takes all the decisions out and it makes it very simple for the customer to buy. So that's the part that's necessary in the product positioning in order to make the do-it-yourself possible. Right. And then, of course, the sales channel is often online. It's almost entirely online because then you can scale. And then you can come in at a price point that is low and easy for the consumer to put in a credit card and accept. So this is a lot to take in. If product-led growth is the first time you've heard that word today, this will be shared with you, so you can take a look at it later on. But with this as background, I'm going to go into our second workshop. So I'll keep this up during the workshop. Actually, can I do that? I will find a way for you to see this during the workshop. But what we're going to do is actually apply these concepts into your own business now. And I know this is the first time you're learning about PLG today, but I want to get that seed started because the best way to learn is by doing. So we're going to split the group up into 3 groups. And again, you can hit that bit.ly link as a different link this time. So type that in and then go there and choose for yourself from one of these groups here on the bottom here. If you are a service company and a service company only, and what you want to do is the first item, which is use a product mindset to repackage your services, then go into room 1. If you are in the middle where you're moving, right now you have a service business and you have some products actually, or you're contemplating some products and you're about to do this transition, go into room 2. And if you're the last one where you already have a product business, you might also have a service business, but you have a product business and you're trying to understand how you can then use that product to use it to lead and grow with product-led growth, then go into room 3. And the reason for these different rooms is because you're at different stages, thinking about different problems, but also the questions that I have you fill out will be different. So I'm going to stop share of this screen and share the workshop details over here. Here we go. Worksheet number 2. Here we go. So are folks able to pop in here, or do I need to share the link? I don't see anyone in here.
Drop the link on the chat. It would be easier, please.
Yeah, I'm going to try and find you though. Let me see. How do I get to? Zoom sure doesn't make it easy. Here we go.
Or I'll just I'll just transcribe it here if you show the link on the screen.
Yeah, I have to stop share, but here we go. Drop the link. I'll just reshare again. There we go. All right.
Requesting access.
It should just. Can anyone with the link can edit? Is it not working?
Maybe share that link again because the one I can you guys access the link, or it's just
No.
No.
Oh. Hold on. Let's get it working here. Relevant 2 ways. Try the bit.ly. Is that working now? Still not working?
Not working.
Oh, I see what
Not
happened.
yet.
Oh, sorry. I will fix it. I figured out why. Anyone with the link can edit. There we go. Now you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to work in here this time. And you're going to have more quiet time because everyone's in a different business. If you're in the same business, you can discuss, find a room of your own and discuss. But we're going to do an exercise where you think internally about your own business, right? So if you're in for group 1, where you're trying to do service delivery with a product mindset, what I want you to do is you're going to answer these questions for yourself, for your business. So pick one of these yellow company name things, type in your own company name and your name. And then these are your questions. So then you can edit in here. You can type answers, right? You can start typing your own answers in here. Obviously, if someone took that one, then take another one. But I've put a number of these in here. So that should be enough for everybody to have their own section. And then you can write in your own answers. Same thing for group 2, right? Moving from service to product, you have a different set of questions because you're in a different stage of business. So again, pick a company name tag, change that, and then answer. So what I'm going to do is allow 10, maybe 15 minutes. I'll check in at 10 minutes to see if people need more time. 10 minutes for you to contemplate these questions for your own business, write out the answers, and then you'll be in the group where everybody else is working on the same answers. Then you can discuss, and it's not, you don't present your questions, it's more like as you write, other questions might come up. So you can learn from each other and be like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? Is that clear? Does everybody know what to do?
Yep.
People some already working on it.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to 1A. I'm gonna open the rooms in a second here, and then you can self-assign yourself into a room. Okay, open. Okay, you are now available to jump into a room of your choice. You may have been put into a room that you previously were in, so if you don't want to be in that room, you can jump out and jump into a different room.
Isto grave mesmo nas salas pequenas.
Mas o que é isto? I check.
Invasion.
Olha.
Invasion Group One.
Obrigada, Miguel. Eu vou deixar isto ligado na mesma. É para fazermos número, mas tenho que ligar ao meu sobrinho.
This is recording. All is good, Vanessa.
Ok. Mas só para saber.
Afinal, mudámos de grupo.
I think we should let's build one saying Dangan, and we can all write their ideas and topics. So I'll do that on the document right now, and we can all add there. And we'll talk, I think, in 5 minutes. I think that's the plan, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Monica. I don't think we have met. I think you muted, Monica.
Sorry. Hi. No, I was here trying to follow everything, and then just a couple appeared with a booking, and it's cancelled. So it was cancelled by the agency. So we're trying to deal with it.
What's the company?
Not our problem. We're just trying to help, but it's always a bit stressful.
Where do you work? Sorry.
I'm in Vila Nova de Mil Fontes.
Very good, very nice.
Very good
E falas português, aposto, não é?
Falo. Apesar de ser aqui, eu falo português.
Yeah. Boa. E é uma empresa de quê?
É um turismo rural, Monte do Zambujeiro, e também sou presidente das Casas Brancas, que é uma associação de turismo com quase 20 anos, que tem os municípios da Algarve e do Alentejo.
Muito bem. E eu tenho um amigo meu que vem ter comigo amanhã que tem um monte de turismo rural que se chama que é na Zambujeira do Mar, por acaso.
Como é que se chama?
Alpenduradas.
O quê? O Francisco?
Francisco
o
Machado.
Zé?
Francisco Machado e o Zé.
Ai, Chiquinho. Está bem, está.
Chiquinho estudou com a gente aqui no Algarve e vem ter comigo onde eu estou, nesta casa, amanhã. Amanhã vem ter comigo.
Eu estudei também no Algarve, Biologia Marinha.
Também é o único curso que se aproveita, estou a brincar.
Claro. E o que é que fazes?
Nós temos uma empresa tenho uma empresa de desenvolvimento de software, ajudamos empreendedores a criar produtos digitais e aplicações e coisas maradas, assim, muito estranhas.
Boa, não, é giro. E conheço também a Rita Gonçalves, Rita Palminha, da ANJ, diretora executiva da ANJ. Somos amigas.
Sei quem é também.
Pronto. É só networking.
Desculpa interromper, Mónica. Já alguém meteu Dangan? É que a Connie entra aqui e vai-nos bater a todos. Já alguém está a meter alguma coisa?
Alguém pôs o quê?
Não, estou a dizer ali no documento.
E agora este grupo é sobre? É que eu estava num grupo sobre cross-pollination e agora não sei o que é que é.
Não, isto agora já é outra.
Pois, já eu fui buscar camas extra e voltei.
Este grupo está no documento, eu posso pôr aqui. Partilha aí o link e
está aqui já.
Boa. Carregares aí, Mónica. E depois
eu fui. Ok, vou abrir. Obrigada, Bruno. É que eu já tenho não sei quantos documentos abertos. É este How Might Your Company Deliver Services with a Product Mindset? É isto?
Tu podes escolher, se o teu é um serviço, tens uma empresa de serviço e gostavas de ter um approach mais de product, ou então vais para a sala 2, que é, já tens um serviço e queres mesmo mudar para um produto na totalidade, ou então já tens um produto e queres mudar para PLG. A maior parte eu acho que está neste grupo. O Nuno António, por exemplo, não está aqui, acho eu. O gajo já tem um produto, que é uma empresa mesmo que vende para PMS e para Hospitality, e já deve estar noutro. Para empresas de serviços, eu acho que...
Mas há outro link? Não.
Para passar para outro grupo. É noutro Breakout Room, ou seja...
Não. Sim, porque há pouco nós estávamos acho que era um B.
Era um B, exatamente.
Ok.
Obrigada.
Nada.
Vê lá aqui a confusão, mas é ossos do ofício.
Não, mas espera aí, eu posso te ajudar, mano. Ou seja, o que acontece é, estás a ver o documento já?
Estou.
Tens Simples C, tens Vanguard Strategy, depois tens DNGAN, estás a ver?
Não.
É logo no início, quando começas no documento, na segunda página. Até vou fazer highlight.
Vanguard Strategy, sim. Vanguard Strategy, sim.
Mais em baixo, then gun, estás a ver?
Certo?
E depois em baixo tens company name, dentro do nome da tua empresa e começas a responder às perguntas em baixo.
Já meteste a ideia, não foi, Miguel? Está aqui em baixo.
Não sei se percebeste, Mónica, se me conseguiu fazer entender.
Eu estou a tentar passar isto aqui para ver o que é que...
All right, folks, we're gonna wrap up this breakout room in a minute here.
Yes.
Are any questions come up during this session? Anything you want to clarify?
A lot of questions, but I'm trying to focus on writing something on the document.
Do the homework. Do the homework. Cool. Oh, I see some great ideas coming out.
We'll give me 1 more minute, please, and
right.
we have time for questions in in 1 minute. Yeah, so we'll get to it. Monica, I don't know if you were able to get it, but because I don't see your company name there, but we will follow along afterwards.
Not yet.
So maybe Connie, you could help her just.
Oh, you're not able to get into the document?
No, she's a bit lost on what she needs to do, and
The problem was I had to go.
You just choose a company name, the yellow, and then put your company name there, and then answer the questions below. Yeah, I see you. You're anonymous rabbit.
Yes, she.
All right, welcome back, everyone. You have way more homework than you had time for, so it's okay that you're not done. What I wanted to do here is spark the thinking, right? Get the ball rolling on, hey, how do I apply this? So that when you walk out of the session, you can come back to this list and continue to fill it out. And hopefully take some actions to help move your business to using product-led growth to grow your business. It's one of the levers you can use, but it's one that has proven time and time again to be very, very powerful. So I'm going to recap now. I'm going to share just basic. There we go. Let's quickly recap. So what we learned today, we learned how you can channel the Silicon Valley mindset for yourself and your company, as well as your business community. That was our first workshop. And then we also learned how to use the product-led growth mindset in order to grow your business, whether that's business in just services today, or you're starting to adopt some products into your business. And with that, we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Any questions about our session today, about the workshop elements we've worked on together? Questions for each other, you know, some ideas that have come up or thoughts that have come up. If you're talking, you're probably on mute.
Yep, I will start with questions. So I have thought about this topic extensively in the last, Andreas, our next speakers are joining us, but they will be here. I've thought about this and just the main questions that you have in the beginning. So and the best thing is to have an example. So we were always a service company building web apps, products, and whatever it is. And the goal was always to build digital products. So this PLG was always what we have been trying to be a part of it. And we want to have a factory that build more PLGs. So how do you productize that? It's gonna be a heavy service company. And and what this triggered was that maybe there's chunks of the work that we do that we could potentially productize, and we just put some ideas there. But just the question is, we can only be on the service delivery with a product mindset, being a startup studio as we are. I don't think moving from service to product is feasible, at least now, or moving from product to PLG even less. And I just wanted to confirm if that makes sense, Connie.
Yeah, you're incubating a number of products then as a startup studio. So all of your portfolio ideas can then use PLG to grow. I agree with you that the core business, which is creating these ideas and creating these products, is more service, right? So that will stay service. But that can also be productized. Like, hey, our service is booting up ideas. So here's the package for booting up ideas. You pay us that, we deliver that, and then the ideas itself then goes into a PLG growth path.
Yep, so potentially, if I understand correctly, the first group made sense, and see what we can productize there, little bits and pieces. But for the products and the companies that we help grow, have a PLG kind of mindset and growth, and it's the only way that makes sense. Got it. Any other questions?
I do have a question, right, which is in a sales-oriented company. Typically, you can start making money really quick and fund development, right? Is it expected in a product-led kind of environment, it will take longer for your revenue to come through? Because you're building up your initial base, potentially your initial base will not pay much, and only later you start kind of generating that revenue. Is that how do you think about it, or does not necessarily?
Yeah, Joachim, you're spot on. If you're entirely product-led business, that you need to give out a free trial. So people are in there using your product for free, and you're sponsoring that for some time. Until you can convert them. That's why a lot of businesses do start as service business. It's just really hard to have the capital to start a product-only business. That cost is going down as you can buy services you don't have to do everything yourself now. Like you can pay as you go, right, for back office, etc. But it's still, costs you have to bear. A lot of product-led businesses are funded by venture as a result. But not all of them. Atlassian never took a cent from venture, right? They just went public all the way from a credit card debt to public. So it doesn't have to be, but there is a service element, right? Like they grew out of a service business, and that they could because they had cash flow from day one being a service business, and then at some point transition. So I think there's always some sponsorship happening, whether that's outside capital or internal, because you have a service business. Somehow you have to be able to give out free samples until you can convert those free samples into paid customers.
Okay, yeah, so that was going to be my next question. If you already have some service going on, you can run both in parallel for a while you fund your product through your services. Could be by the same brand name, or it could be by a different thing, but at least you can run concurrently on both streams, right? In order to get some money as a service and fund the product-led development, if no seed money is kind of readily available at the initial stage. Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, let's take one last question.
I have one, but please, I don't want to use the time. So if anyone wants. No, okay. So I think this is spot on, Connie. So most of the companies, or some of the companies in Portugal, especially in the Algarve, I think they still a lot of them still have a more service, more traditional kind of approach, because they were used to service like internal markets, and there's more revenue stability in PLG kind of companies, and it's easier to grow and to maintain. So if how can we help them change or find opportunities where they can productize their services? Do you have any suggestions or last thoughts on that? Because I think that should be super helpful for next episode or next conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So the second workshop we did today is the beginnings of that, right? I work with clients on this problem basically, and we go through a series. So it's not a one time, right? You have a flavor of it today, but you need to do more, because you're going to generate these ideas with your team. You're going to go back and decompress those ideas, figure out, like, slash them and say these don't work, and then come back with a refined list. And then we figure out, okay, what experiments can we run? You know, you have, I think in your table you had like 5 or 6 different possible packages you can put in front of customers. But then we need to refine those. So, okay, well, let's put a landing page up. Let's, do some marketing motion behind it. Let's see if there's demand, for this thing that we think might be a product or a productized service. And then we can come back with the numbers. So we go through this process together, where we together, work on the milestones and help them step through the milestones with the right metrics. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you have a cohort of people who want to do this together, that social support is also really nice. A lot of companies do it one-on-one with me, but like a whole cohort of business owners who want to step through this exercise together can be a very interesting project for us.
Awesome. I think that's a very good idea for next steps. And thank you so much, Connie. This was awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
it's a pleasure for me to meet all of you today. And I put up my contact information here, so feel free to reach out to me anytime. I will end with this final thought, which is, here we go, that Silicon Valley is a mindset. And my hope is that you can take the best of this mindset and use it in your community, and leave the not so good part with us. But there's certainly a lot to be learned here. And I hope that this was a generative and interesting session for you today.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Cheers.
Guys, stay on the line, please. We have Mr. Andreas here and Mr. Tommy. I think he was here. Oh, Andreas already has the camera turned on. Tommy, are you there? I think he just dropped. Give me 1 second. We are starting. So now we're going to have just a quick intro conversation, so that I can introduce two people that I really like and consider my friends. I'm just making some time so that Tommy jumps in, but I will start introducing, and we'll just jump right into it with Andreas, that's here with his best shirt today, and he's going to close the door or something. Go, Andreas, go. We'll make a little bit.
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
So,
took care of the dog and everything. Yep.
Oh yeah, man. So sorry, just onboarding Thomas Zoom. So this link here. Okay, just sending the link again. Tommy was here, so I don't know what happened. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some entrepreneurs that have built their companies and worked in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley for a while. Andreas has been there for 1 or 2 years, or a little bit more. He will tell you guys. I think that I have been going to the Bay Area for a while and trying to develop and do quite a lot of business development for some years now. And I would say that Andreas, it's by far one of my biggest mentors and the persons that helped me the most. Thomas, Tommy, like he prefers to be called, is here. Hi, Tommy. Thanks for joining us. And Tommy is also in the Bay Area, and we'll pass the ball to him. So I'll start with the first questions for Andreas and ask for him to introduce himself a little bit, and then I'll pass it to Tommy, if that's okay. So Andreas, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about you and how did you end up in the Bay Area?
Okay. Pleasure to meet everybody. Some of you I know already, and it's always great to be on one of these events with Miguel. He's an awesome guy. So yeah, so I have some really interesting background because I grew up in Germany in a bilingual family, spoke English and German at home. And then we moved to the US. And so what I'd like to cover just with my introduction is some of these things, some of these cultural differences that are a lot deeper than we think. We just assume that, especially Germans and Americans, or the English and the Americans think, oh, we're so close. It's just, like the English and the Americans think we basically speak the same language. But there are so many differences you have to be aware of. So I just wanted to kind of think back when I moved here, or some of the really interesting challenges I noticed between American and German and European ways of looking at even daily life. I mean, one of them is the concept of time, which I think is fascinating. Like in German, if you say, hey, we have a meeting and we're going to be there at 1 o'clock, you are there at exactly 1 o'clock. And and this is on the private side. I know Americans are a lot more flexible. It's if you're invited to somebody's house, it's a little bit different if it's just a one-on-one. You would tend to be much more on time. But if you're invited to like a bigger gathering, so being 15 minutes, half an hour late is totally normal. And the funny thing is, if you're German, we had some Swiss friends here. This was a while back, and we invited them over to our house. It was a bigger gathering, and so I was kind of in the American mentality. And so I invited them over, and they actually we said, hey, just show up at 5 o'clock, at 5 p.m. And they got there. They were there at 4:59. They're lining up on the front door. So it's just crazy, I think. And it's we're so close, but these are just little things you have to be aware of when you're dealing with other cultures. The other big thing, and this really fits in with business as well, is Americans love small talk, and Americans are usually pretty good at it. And so Europeans, from the European point of view, we say, oh, they're superficial. This is totally unnecessary. But it actually it does achieve a lot, because it breaks the ice. You can kind of get to know the other person on a very different level, and so kind of easing into that I think is really important as well. And it's funny when I work with Germans, they're just very to the point, and it's you have a meeting and you just shut up until you get to the point, and Americans might see that as kind of uncomfortable, and so just the small talk, I think is really interesting, kind of the icebreaker that Americans are so good at. Another one is so from the European side. And I really think like all Europeans tend to be, and it doesn't matter if you're Danish or German or French, you tend to be much more direct. And Germans are the worst, right? I mean, they will immediately get to the point. Like if there's a meeting, I'll say, hey, let's just sit down and here's kind of what I need to focus on. And that's something that I think will take a lot of Americans by surprise. So you have to be very, very gentle about kind of approaching subjects. I think that really helps. So I think, I mean, sometimes it's actually really helpful to consider, like if you're doing, if you're focusing on doing business long term in the United States, to actually hook up maybe with a language coach and just to go through some, just to go through some scenarios with them. I remember I had a, so we can go into more business detail as we progress. But I remember I had a boss. I worked for a French company, and his name was Benoit, and his English was pretty good, but he just had little quirks that all of us were a little bit hesitant to point out to him. And like when he talked, like often he would address us, or he would address a larger crowd, and he'd say, we must fuck you on this problem. We must truly fuck you. And when I told him, it sounds kind of bad the way you're saying it, he didn't really get it. And so I think sometimes, maybe sending your boss or one of the people you're working with to a language coach can make a huge difference. So one more thing, I know I'm kind of blabbering on, but one more thing I'd like to point out is the false friends you can have in languages, and I just find them so fascinating, because Germans can be very, or can seem very confident. So they're talking about certain things, and they talk about like a beamer. Does anybody, what's a beamer? Does anybody know?
BMW?
So beamer, yeah, exactly. Right. Like in the US, to an English-speaking person, a beamer is a BMW, exactly. But a German person would totally think a beamer is something that beams information. So it's a projector, right? And it's, totally serious. A beamer in German is an overhead projector. And the most confident Germans just assume, oh, that's the word. So they use it in an international setting, and confusion just reigns. Well, another thing is, does anybody know what this is called in German by any chance? It's really funny. It's called handy, because it's handy, got in your hand. And so a lot of Germans assume that this is the English word. It's not. It's, it could be a mobile or a cell phone or a portable or whatever. But if you don't understand that difference, and you say, hey, before this meeting, I'd like everybody to turn off their handies, and they're like, what the hell is he talking about? So
Andrea,
that's, yeah. That's
Andrea,
just my brief introduction here.
I'll show you guys what I'm doing, and I'm creating a mind map with some of the suggestions. The goal here is for us to cover your experience in how you got into the US market, and the like challenges and stuff that you're sharing. And to introduce yourself, just give us like 1 or 2 minutes, 1 minute of your introduction and a little bit of what you do. And then I'll pass it to Tommy, and he can introduce himself and also talk a little bit, and then we'll continue the conversation on the other questions that we've organized and whatnot. Okay.
Perfect. So what's interesting to this roundtable is that I worked. So I worked for 2 tech firms. One was French and one was English, and they basically stayed in their home. So the development was taken care of in France and in England. But we ended up moving marketing to the United States, and it was one of the best. It was one of the best decisions we ever made for both of those companies, because they ultimately led to an IPO. So I can talk a little bit more about that, but I think that'll be really helpful. I don't have specific like small business experience, but it's kind of just the larger picture of having been a VP of marketing for 2 European firms that made it in the US. And then I started my own company in 2001. I started a marketing, like a small marketing agency, digital marketing agency, and we're in the US, and we're also and have a separate company in Germany as well. And so we've been doing digital marketing ever since 2001.
For what small companies did you work with in terms of digital marketing?
We worked with LinkedIn, Yelp, and Skype. and those were so don't laugh. They were really small when we first started with them. We worked with so one of my favorite examples is we worked with LinkedIn when they were just tiny. They didn't really know what they were doing. They needed more digital exposure, and so we helped them. I mean, it was kind of a silly experiment, but you know, online organic results, you want as much exposure as possible through your website, and so we help them with the concept of kind of the internet profile, the open profile that anybody can access. So I think the initial idea was, okay, so we've got this, you know, we've got this ecosystem. We need to close it off. We can't let anybody in there. But obviously, to share it with Google, you need to get some information out. And so we decided, well, what if we had like a public profile or an internet or a Google profile, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it, and you make that, you publish that, and it might just be 50% of the entire profile, which took LinkedIn a little bit of convincing initially, but once we got there, we went from 10,000 visible profiles to millions of visible profiles. So that's and I mean they were really small back then, so that was a blast to work with them.
Yeah, I hope you had some equity there, jokes aside. But man, that's awesome, and you have a lot of experience, and I think you're very humble. So thank you for sharing and for being here. I will pass the microphone to my friend Tommy. He's an innovator at heart, but I will let him introduce himself because he does a much better job than I could. Tommy, please take the floor, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for including me on the conversation, Miguel. And I think, in terms of the content and the discussion here, my current work is not far removed from my international business experience, but it's related. So what I'll do is just kind of give you a brief overview of what I'm working on now, and then more to the point of this conversation, just share a little bit more about my background, which was kind of a different life. But right now I'm the founder and the CEO of a group called the Innovators Collab, and we are a member-based working group in collaboration of Fortune 500 type chief innovation officers and other senior innovation leaders. So we're private, we're by invitation only, we're member founded, we're member directed. And really the purpose of our group is to connect peers with one another to share best practices, connect with resources and capital and opportunity, and mainly to help each one of our organizations make innovation reliable, repeatable, dependable, and in the long term, grow enterprise value through new product development, new service development, really new innovations. And so I've been doing this for about 10 years, but prior to that, really towards the beginning of my career, I was an international, we'll just say international business person, and imported products and distributed products from about 6 different continents around the world, almost every one. I think we ended up working with about 15 different manufacturers in Portugal, in Germany, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, mainly in the recreation space. And so we work with lots of different, let's just say, cultures in that project. And my primary role, my business that I owned, was not only representing those manufacturers by buying and reselling their products, but really was kind of let's just say kind of a cultural attaché. And what we would do is work with all of our partners to make sure that their products, their narrative, their marketing, really everything was in place to cater to let's just say the North American market. So that's just a little bit of the work that I'm doing now, a little bit of my background. I'm happy to kind of double click on any part of that, in terms of sharing, what has worked in those situations and what hasn't.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. And I think we now should. So it's an open conversation. If anyone wants to ask a question, in for example, how did Andreas start his business and acquiring his clients and struggles, or Thomas when he was working with logistical companies, or just starting Innovators Collab. So it's a roundtable. So people are invited to ask questions. Just jump in at any time. I do have some more questions prepared because yes, I prepared for this session today. So suggestions to get into the US market. And I'm creating a mind map that I will share briefly. And there's one that Andreas shared, that it's getting a language coach. And I love it because I thought that I could speak okay English. I don't speak it well enough yet, but either way, there was a lot of mistakes that then my American friends corrected me very kindly, and it does take you a long way, because it's just embarrassing, because you think you're talking with all conviction. And for example, just one little story, I used to say ecosystem because here in Portuguese it's ecosistema, and I was going to conference in Texas in the US, talking to hundreds of people and saying ecosystem, and then someone had courage. And that's the subtlety that Andreas already said, that Germans and Dutch people, not all Europeans, Portuguese people and more Latin kind of cultures, they are less confrontational and direct, so they avoid that like fire. But then someone told me that it was ecosystem, and so I suggest that the coach is a very good idea, and I have been trying to reinforce that. So any other suggestions for getting into the US market marketing wise? How could we start? Is there like groups, support groups, associations? Love to get ideas from you guys if you have any suggestions there. And I'll set the scene. I am a company that I sell software to manage hotels, for example, or whatever it is, and I want to get into the US market and get new clients, or I want to sell IT services to keep it a bit more broader. What suggestions would you guys have?
Andreas, you
I
want to
think
go ahead?
Yeah. I just want to kind of talk about this at a really high level, and this is from my experience with a French company. So it's a French software company, and later an English software company. They're in Manchester. And so what was interesting for me is, first of all, getting hired by the French company, because I speak French really well, and so I could establish a great relationship with the French teams. And basically, at that point, everybody was in France, and they had just had the idea of opening a US office. Okay, and so they hired me because they realized that marketing needed to be done right. They needed somebody in the US, and I feel like that was, and they've been kind of going back and forth, and they've been saying, oh no, we got somebody in England, they can handle the US market. And the thing I learned from there was that once that decision was made, basically to have marketing, and I mean, the nice thing for me was it didn't just end up being US marketing, but it ended up being all marketing was focused in the United States. So I ended up having a team and a really nice budget. But I think once we made that decision, and once we actually had salespeople, physical salespeople in the US, physical marketing people in the US, then that kind of prepared us for an IPO. And I mean, interestingly enough, it was a French IPO on a small technical French market, but it was an IPO nevertheless. That was, the foundation was the fact that we focused, that we took the United States so seriously. And so same thing, almost exact same thing. That's why this English company hired me, because they're like, oh my gosh, you did this for the French company. Can you help us? And we did the same thing. We just really focused on the US, had local people, had local marketing, and that made a huge difference. Because I would always say, like to the French company, I'd say, okay, I mean, you could develop French software in France, but you don't want to make a big deal out of it. And I I actually I was very hesitant because some of the error messages in the software came up in French, and I said, "Oh my God, can we please change those to English?" Because from an American perspective, you think, "Oh, the French, oh, they're great. There's Paris, there's blah blah blah. There's the French are good at bread and at wine." But when it comes to software, French software? Are you kidding? And so I think just shifting, just taking taking this market entry so seriously that they actually shifted marketing to the US and hired people in the US, that's one of the biggest differences that we could make. And I mean, I've never looked back, and neither have those two companies.
So Tommy, I'll pass the ball to you. If I understand correctly, Andreas, localize. So what you're saying, it's super important to have someone. If not, they don't have the means to hire someone to be there full time. Potentially have a partner, or look for a biz dev partner that have boots on the grounds, understand the culture, and so on. Is that, did I get it?
Absolutely, at the very least, yeah. Because I mean, to all of us, it's so tempting with the internet just to say, "Oh no, I can do this online and nobody will ever notice." And I mean, it's just one small thing, and that's kind of tying things into digital marketing, and that's my perspective. So if you think about your presence, your online presence is basically rooted in what Google perceives you to be, right? So if your website, for example, if your company is not set up in Google My Business, right, and you don't have a bona fide local presence that's set up in the US, let's say Austin, Texas, right? So you're in Austin, Texas, and you have an actual business that's set up in Google My Business, and you can't really trick Google into that. I mean, WeWorks only works to a certain extent. Once Google finds out, that address is not going to work. But once you've got that, then you've got this perception from Google that, okay, these guys are really, and it's okay that you're in the Algarve or in Lisbon or wherever as well. But if Google perceives you as having this actual physical, pretty much verified existence in the United States, then that will help your organic rankings a ton. So just as a little example, I just wanted to pass that along.
I mean, I'll just echo what Andrea said. And maybe just kind of double down on one part of that. And I think the local presence and what that looks like can take on lots of different shapes and forms. Ultimately, at some point, an organization that is foreign looking to get into the US is going to need somebody who understands like both sides of the equation, who understands the US market in that specific area, but also understands the product in the culture and the strategy, of the company they're working with, whether that's an employee that comes from, Europe or another location to set up the organization in the United States, that's fine. But they really, and I've seen a lot of this. I've seen a lot of, foreign-based companies, come to the United States and get it wrong. They might really understand, their home market or other markets, and then come to the United States and they just don't understand how things work. And not that it's complex or complicated. It can be, but it's just knowing it. It's knowing, how to operate a business at a basic level. Physical addresses and what that means, and local laws and customs and cultures. Those are all really important to have. And there's a basic level, and then there are more advanced levels, in terms of your market and your product and your service and how things operate, sales and marketing. So where I've seen the most success is in somebody who understands both sides of the equation, who understands the local market, but also understands, the company and what they're trying to do. That can come in the form of a partnership, that can come in the form of a local representative, that can come in the form of somebody who's just doing business development and can set them up. And to your question, Miguel, about local groups, there are lots of groups in the US, the World Trade Center organization, who we work really closely with. I think they have over 375 different like chapters around the world. So that is a very well-connected organization. And I think more around the basics of connecting with resources in local communities. But you can get into smaller pockets that are more specific, technology-oriented companies for marketing products, in a certain area. You can find those companies and those organizations to plug into, and they're not too hard to find. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find them, on the internet, where there are either trade groups or advocacy groups, or even just lighter collaborations around, what companies are trying to do. I mean, I'm sure, Miguel, you can find organizations in your area that are trying to come into the US, whether it's just a small group. And so you can pull your resources and your questions like you're doing here, to connect with things. So there are lots of resources out there. It's just a matter of finding out what your strategy is and connecting with the right ones. And sometimes that can be costly, that can take time, but finding the right partner can make all the difference in the world.
So let me just give a very specific example that I just remembered, and this is specifically my company, Blue Fusion. Was founded in 2001. So I founded this company with a German guy, and we founded it in the United States. And then in 2003, he decided to move back to Germany, and so it kind of made sense that we would do something in parallel. And so then, and here we had Blue Fusion Inc. that we founded together. And then in Germany, we had the Blue Fusion GmbH, which started in 2003. And then as we were doing that, Tommy, we had all these questions like, how do we do this? And it's interesting because it's the exact opposite of what you may be looking at. We're kind of thinking, okay, so we got this idea that works in the US. How do we take this to Germany? But I had this connection already, and this guy was moving back to Germany to an ecosystem that he understood, right? So it was super easy, and it was a no-brainer. And I mean, we were all set in a sense, but we still had all these questions, like how do we, like, so we have a US part and we have a European or a German part. How do we work these together? Like, how do we, in terms of an accountant, like how do we pay taxes? How does, what makes sense here? And so we just kind of went back and forth and talked to some accountants and international accountants. They're, back then they're like $900 an hour, $1,000 an hour. And they, oh my God, this is so damn complicated. What the hell are we going to do? And then we just got really creative and we said, okay, we are Blue Fusion, right? We understand that. The branding is Blue Fusion on the internet. It's clear, it's not a big deal. That's a given, that's the foundation. So then what we decided is I had a really good CPA in the US, but he was American, he's American, he knows American law. Marcus, the German guy, had a really good German CPA. And then we just said, you know what? We'll just separate our companies. Like nobody has to know that we're fiscally, financially totally separate. And they're, one is an Inc., one's a GmbH, and the interesting thing was once we made that decision, so it's just a creative decision, just a wacky way of handling it. We had access to our favorite CPA, and the CPA at the time was, was only $400 versus $900 or $1,000. And I knew that if I go to this guy, he knows exactly what the best answer is for what I'm trying to do in the US, and he doesn't have to be distracted by, oh, that's right, oh shoot, oh, you got Germany, and how does that's gonna change the decision-making process. And it was suddenly we just had this enlightenment, and it was really easy. But again, you just have to be creative. You just have to, have the right kinds of resources, and then you can get through that stuff. And it's been marvelous because I've been giving this advice to other companies as well, where then they'll ask us, so how do you work together? And I say it's really easy. If I have a US project where we need support from Germany, then I'll just hire somebody from the German office. I'll pay them, right? And it's like my accountant sees that there's money going to, or that there's money going to Germany, and it's a service, it's an exchange, and there's no problem. It's super easy. So in a sense, sometimes you can just be really creative and kind of I don't know, solve challenges that just seem humongous before.
I'm going to share the screen. Tommy, do you want to add something, or were you going to interject?
No. I mean, I have to just kind of echo everything that's being said here.
Yep.
Just in general, finding, I think when we're looking to do cross-border stuff, there's a lot of iteration and experimentation and failing, and and one thing that was helpful for me was finding maybe a group of companies that had come, entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs who had come before us in a similar space, and being able to understand the pain points that they had gone through, that we were going to go through. And so I had a group of, I'd say, probably a dozen different business leaders that I could lean on to ask these questions pretty quickly, and they were very open to sharing this. It was a loose collaboration, and these are just kind of relationships. But I think finding those folks who have gone before you in similar spaces is a really valuable thing to set up when you're embarking on this type of work.
I wish I could have met you guys, but that would not be possible. For 5 or 6 years ago, these tips would be super helpful, and I agree with them. So I have been, can you guys see the screen, by the way?
Yeah.
So the mindset and getting companies there, the cultural differences, please pardon the typos and the stuff, but being punctual and understanding the cultural differences, that it's something, the directness, I think this is super important. Americans, in my opinion, are very PC and very respectful of each other, and sometimes people don't take that too much in consideration. And I'll just I'm not going to read all these things, but I'm just showing you one of the outputs that we would like to share potentially as an added content piece to this roundtable. Suggestions to get into DS: get a language coach. I love that. Localize, and this it's super important, and we've covered some of the topics there. If there's any questions, please just open the microphone and ask them. And then I'm here. We'll get into these ones later down. But is it super important to create a local presence? It was a question, and it became a statement. Do you guys agree? I think we are all agreeing with this. Yeah. Some kind of a local presence.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
it reduces the cultural gap. One question do I have? So should we set up a company? Do you guys think it's mandatory to set up a company to do business there? Or do you guys think it's weird to invoice through an European company?
I think it's kind of strange to invoice through a European company. I think having a local, let's just say US base, and it doesn't need to be complicated. There's a lot of technology that makes this easy. I don't know, I'm not up to date on all the incorporation laws in terms of foreign nationals setting up a US corporation. You're challenging me to think through what that would look like. But either way, it's with or without a US partner, setting up a local entity in the United States is fairly easy. It's fairly simple. And so with that, you can actually, if you have a local entity, and once again, we're also pushing the bounds these days on physical presence, with people working remotely. And I know there are, digital nomads out there. The space is shifting pretty quickly. People are working out of their homes. And so, I'm not up to date on all of those things, but yes, having a local presence in the US, whether that's serviced from Europe or other countries, is a different story. But it, I think, just allows you to instill trust with your customers, and also allows you to kind of operate a bit more freely here in the US versus having a foreign company operate in the US. I think that there's just more complexity and more challenges to that.
Yes, so I totally agree with that. I mean, kind of coming from the invoicing from the US, just little things that could really confuse or irritate like local partners or clients. So what I would recommend is working with setting up a US company structure is very, very easy. And I looked this up last night because I wasn't sure, but it's no problem at all for a non-American to set up a company in the US. It's so weird because like if you come here to work, it's like there's no way. You need all these visas and everything. But setting up a company is no problem at all, which kind of makes sense from a capitalist perspective, obviously. And so the US is very inexpensive. You can get like an LLC or an S Corp set up very quickly. What I would recommend, again, we're so tempted. We've got the internet. We can set up your company for for 20 cents or for $2. It's like don't do that. Go to a professional. Go to somebody who knows what they're doing and work with them to set up your company. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a super expensive individual. It doesn't even have to be international law necessarily. But it's like you're setting up an LLC in Silicon Valley. Work with somebody who's there who can help you with that, because it'll be be a few $1,000s, but then okay, this is something solid. This is something that that's going to be something you can build your company on.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too. If you have the basics of an attorney in the US and a CPA, which is a certified public accountant, right, on the finance side, so you have legal and finance covered, they can actually do a lot for you. Like a lawyer in the United States who sets up a corporate entity in the US, like they can be your representative in a lot of ways. They can be a mailing address. They can they can serve in a lot of different basic roles. Obviously, they're not going to do business development and marketing and some of the more functional areas of running the business, but they can really do they can provide some basic cover for you in the US if you just want to get going. So yes, having an attorney to set up your company, to be your legal representative, to help you navigate some of those concerns. And then of course on the finance side, having a CPA or even in both of these cases, maybe a firm. If you hire a firm, a CPA firm and a law firm that has extensive resources within the organization, on the law firm side, they have lots of different types of attorneys that can help you with various matters. They'll be, in most cases, a bit more expensive, but they can offer you a lot more services under one roof, both on the finance side and the legal side, and can get you pretty far down the road to starting to transact locally with American customers.
It's so worth it. Yep, I agree.
I was writing in my little mind map thing. Cool, guys. So like a CPA and the lawyer makes total sense. I think there's even now some like software as a service, PLG, using the keyword that we've learned in our last workshop, that streamline a lot of these things to setting up an account, setting up the company, especially in Delaware and other places that are more used to this kind of stuff. So that's one of the questions, and I think we're all saying it's not that complex to sort it and to think, could we do it? And do you guys think it could be done virtually, or do we need to have boots on the ground?
I think if you're looking just to set up an LLC and start transacting, all you need is, an attorney and a CPA, like I said, to get things going, and they can walk you through what you need. right? They can ask you questions and interview you on what type of a corporation you want, what type of corporation you're going to grow into as well. I think that's really important. You know, you're going to be a different organization as you launch locally or in the United States than you're going to be in 3 to 5 years. Those are going to be different. You know, you're going to be a different organization. And so I think, in my experience, having you know, a group or a firm or somebody who can grow with you through those different phases is really important, because you might want to be a different type of a corporation now than in a couple of years. So having somebody who can counsel you through that is really invaluable.
Because I think, yeah, I think there are only so many questions you can answer yourself, because it's like when I first started my company, I just didn't know, like, I mean, I wanted to be a corporation because that was the big thing. And so I thought, oh, C Corp, right? Then I talked to my CPA, who's also a lawyer, which works out really well. And he kind of walked me through all the options, and LLCs had just come out. And he said, you know, I kind of want to stay away from those because they haven't proven themselves. Okay. And then I said, what about C Corp? He said, no, that doesn't make any sense because it's double taxation. But if you start as an S Corp, you can also become a C Corp later. And so yeah, I've been an S Corp ever since, and I've never regretted it, because it was his feedback, his input, his knowledge. So in a sense, I paid for you know, tens of thousands of dollars I could have lost if I'd gone in the wrong direction. And suddenly the fact that I paid him back then, well, like, you know, $400 an hour, or you know, $200 to make that decision, is like, oh my God, what a joke. I was so happy I did it. Yeah. Because if you just go online, you just kind of trust the you know, the internet to answer your questions, there's so many challenges and so many issues that can come up, and just having a person that you're actually paying, somebody who's there, definitely makes sense. Yeah.
Two more questions on these quick ones. If anyone has questions, please write them down on the chat or just open the mic. Is it so? If I open my LLC or S Corp, our lawyer Andre has just suggested, we've just learned something here. Is it too expensive if I'm not doing any revenue? I opened it because I want to go there and I want to look more legit and credible, and I'm serious about it. So I'm not doing any revenue. Is it expensive to maintain the operation there if you're not doing any profits or revenue, in your opinion?
So I think, so I don't know exactly how long you can get away with not having any profits, but initially I really think it's just $800 a year, like for our S Corp, like that's kind of the tax, the minimum tax you have to pay. And then there's like a, you know, $25 re-registration forms, not a big deal. And then, you know, a little bit of hourly with your accountant or lawyer. So I mean, I would think, you know, you could keep it you could keep it really inexpensive. I mean, I would almost say, hey, just get something started, and then build on that. And then if after 2 years it's just not working, just dissolve it. And okay, so then you no longer have an S Corp, not a big deal, but it was really worth the effort to do this right from the very beginning. Yeah, so I don't think so. Don't take my word for it, but I don't think it's that expensive to have an LLC or an S Corp for a year or two. I know. So I know, like I know in Germany, you have to have certain reserves. You need to prove that, hey, we've got, I don't know, let's say like 50,000 euros in the bank or something like that. In the US, I'm pretty sure you don't. So you could have $0 in the bank and it'd be totally fine. I don't know how long you can go. If you could just go, you know, 3 years without making any profits, because obviously the government wants to get something back. But it's not very expensive just to have a company.
Tommy, do you want to add something? I'll just tell you why I asked. Before, like in Portugal a few years ago, when I wanted to open my company, my first company, like they required for us to have initial capital to create a company of like 5,000 euros. Then now they've removed it, so that's a great thing. But that's what I'm trying to understand, so that the audience and the people that will see this great content understand if that's a blocker or not. If we're talking about like 1,000 euros to 2,000 euros a year or dollars to maintain it, I think that's totally acceptable. But I was trying to get your feeling, because we haven't set up an operation there yet with my company, so I honestly don't know.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I don't think there are any capital requirements. That's more of a banking concern. And I don't know how long you can go without having profits. I mean, obviously, if you set up a corporation, there's intent to produce, revenue, right? I mean, so what if you don't, then then it was an unsuccessful venture, and you just dissolve it. I know in one of the companies I've founded or co-founded 7 different ventures at this point. And I think at one point towards the end of one of my ventures, we had, we still had the LLC open, but we hadn't been producing revenue for 2 or 3 years, and I didn't hear anything. We had a run before that of 8 or 9 years, and then we sold it off. But the LLC that we were operating was still in existence, and we just hadn't shut it down for no particular reason. But and then we went to dissolve it, and we did, but there was no concern. And I don't think on the front end of starting a new venture, there are any capital requirements for, let's just say, a basic, corporation, basic, we keep using these words, LLC. That's a limited liability corporation. It's a very popular business entity, legal entity, and I don't think there's any requirements for that, just to have a basic one. Now, if you have more specialized business where you're maybe an investment vehicle or real estate holding company, right, getting into some more specialized areas of the market, there might be some other capital requirements that you need to pay attention to. But for a basic product or service company, my understanding is that there are no capital requirements.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so no capital requirements, and potentially $1,000 to $2,000 a year if you're not doing revenue would potentially cover it. We're not asking anyone to give a specific answer. It's just trying to understand and getting a feeling of how difficult it would be.
Yeah, once again, Miguel, real quick, sorry to interject, but with these types of questions, CPAs, attorneys, yeah, they can answer this stuff in a second. Like they're prepared to answer these questions. So my suggestion obviously is to have all these questions ready to go, and then when you sit down with an attorney and a CPA, they can provide these types of answers pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to one of our last topics. So business development strategy suggestions. I'd love to, let's just frame the hypothesis a little bit. So I have a service company that I can provide services globally. It's very broad, so I could provide, and I have all the conditions invoicing from the US with the proper LLC or S Corp, whatever it is, incorporated there. How do I search for, or how can I find new clients and start doing some networking? And we've already talked about the partnerships and someone that will guide you there. So besides the partnership, any ideas or strategies on, and I'll start with one. That's what personally I did. So basically bought a plane ticket and went there and went to Meetup and Eventbrite, and every event and meetups that were happening, I went to them, and I just started trying to get a sense of the culture, the how people related with each other, and start doing some contacts and finding interesting contacts, and that had some results, I have to say, and from that there was some contacts, and then I went back and to other cities in the US, because and this is something that we haven't covered, but people forget how big the US is. So it's I think that we shouldn't talk about moving or doing marketing in the US, but potentially state by state or something like that. It would be potentially easier to start, and that's, I didn't do that. I started in New York, and then we got contacts that were in Texas. Then I went to Texas, and then we got contacts that were in the Bay Area, and I went to the Bay Area, and then the contacts started arising from those engagements and going to these meetups and so on, and that's the places or the states that we did and continue to do business development. So in parallel, I would love to get some tips and ideas from you guys, if you have some, on business development and getting their network started.
So I think from the very beginning, I've always really truly enjoyed networking, just getting together with people, meeting people, going to conferences, etc. And when my business partner and I, when he first started Blue Fusion, all we would do is go to networking events, and it was great. It was so fulfilling, especially because we were both. He was in Belmont, and I'm down here in Santa Cruz, which is below San Francisco, so basically south of the Bay Area. But it's very easy to get. Like if there's an event in San Jose, I can be there in half an hour, which is incredible. So we would go to these events, and they're physical. We attended physically. We met partners. We met investors, although we never ended up getting external investments. Met prospects, potential clients. And I mean, here's one example. I remember meeting. God, it was so I did a presentation with another presenter who was from West Marine, which is a kind of a boat, like a huge boat accessory retailer. And so the presentation I got through one of my networking events, and so we talked about SEO, and he talked about SEO as well, because he was the VP of marketing or the CMO of West Marine, which is it happened to be a company in my area. It's only about.
Sorry. I'm just muting Gil Guilherme. That is a friend of mine, but he's behaving very badly. Sorry, continue, Andrea.
And so it ended up being that we did a presentation about SEO, and we were really focused on SEO, search engine optimization, and he was looking at it from his perspective. He had dabbled with it a little bit as VP of marketing. And then after the event, we just connected, and we said, oh, it was really great to meet you. And he actually asked me, he said, oh, I love what you were talking about. Could we see what your company can do for my company? And I felt like this was like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months after I'd started Blue Fusion. And I felt like, wow, I have hit this. I've reached goal. This is it. It's a huge company. It's in the Bay Area. It's like 2 miles away from where I live. And it was fantastic, because then after that, we got Plantronics, and then we got other, we got Yelp and LinkedIn, and it all just came together. But I think a lot of that came from physical networking, actually talking to people face to face. Same thing with you, Miguel. We met online, and we did so much interacting. But then when I finally met you in Beja, like something happened. It's like, I can trust this guy. I can truly trust him. I mean, I've always had that feeling, but just meeting you in person was huge. So I think there's something to be said about that. And I'd like to get into the internet stuff a little more. I have some more pointers, but it's so easy for us to kind of discard face-to-face, because everything can be done virtually, can be done, via Zoom and whatever. But I think meeting somebody in person is extremely important if you can do it. Yeah.
Yep, I agree 100%. One suggestion now in these special pandemic times, it's lunch club. It's something that me and Bruno, that's also in this call, have been using extensively to network with, and then you can select the areas where you want to network with people. So we've defined the Bay Area and we just get targeted with people from the Bay Area. But I agree 100%. I would love to get Tommy. I know he needs to leave in 4 minutes, so I would love to get his last remarks in terms of business development suggestions. And I have one tip here, ideas. That's find a group of founders of people that have done it and get their advice. I took note, and I think that's an awesome one. In terms of business development, any suggestions, Tommy?
Yeah, I think, what Andrea said is totally relevant. I mean, we're human beings, we're social beings. That's what we gravitate towards. We want to interact with people in person, and that is something that is deep within our DNA. I think that where we are now with networking is different than it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we need to come up with, and have come up with, like new models and new practices for networking, and whether that's just networking for networking's sake. I mean, some people love networking and just want to meet people and talk to people with no agenda, and that's great. I mean, I love that too. They just want to talk with other business people and share what's going on, and share trends and things of that nature, right, with no agenda, and that's great. In other cases, there can be an agenda, right, where you're looking for business, you're looking to create prospects and fill your sales funnel and produce revenue. And I think that those two practices are different. I think that they overlap in some cases. And I think if sometimes, at least in my experience, if you are bringing that business development and sales agenda to an environment where it's not maybe generally accepted, that there can be some tension or some friction. You're moving into an environment that wants to be more social, and you're trying to sell something, that there can be problems, there can be friction that's caused by that. So if there's, just in closing, I think that we're in this environment now where, we are, I mean, I've been on 4 calls today with people all over the world. I mean, that's pretty amazing that we can be in this situation and connect with people. I mean, I was on the phone call earlier today with people across Europe, Thailand, across the US, like all, and it's not even lunchtime. And so I think that's just really special. So we're at the beginning of this journey where we're within these digital technologies and in these virtual communities, in these virtual environments, and we're still figuring it out. So I don't think that we're still inventing it, right? We're still doing that. So there's lots of inventing to do here, and there's lots of innovation to happen. But I think that just in general, business development can be done from anywhere in the world. You don't have to have an LLC set up in the United States to do business development here. That's probably what I'll say in closing.
Thank you, and I'll write down a bullet point even before having an LLC to start testing the grounds and trying to do some digital networking and engaging with people and creating this network would be a potentially helpful tactic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm totally open to continue this conversation. If anybody wants to touch base on any of this, Andreas, great to share the stage with you. And Miguel, thank you for the invite, and you all have a great day.
Thank you, Tommy. We'll invite you to the Algarve pretty soon. So we'll talk soon. Andreas will wrap it up in 5 minutes. Bye, Tommy. Thank you.
Bye, Tommy.
Bye, Tommy.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much, man. Andreas, we are at our last topic. It was this business development. Business development and ideas. The other one that I had was tips and suggestions, and I've added some there in the diagram that we will share. We'll fine tune it and share, and I'll share it with you guys also to revise it and see if we want to add any more little bits and pieces of information. As a closing remark in terms of a company that would like to, and we focused a lot on service companies that would want to go there and set an operation. If it's a product company, I think the conversation is different, and there's the VCs,
Right.
there's a bunch of other gateways, and I think that's going to be a good topic for next event pretty soon. Any last ideas, suggestions that you want to cover that we didn't touch base?
Yeah, I just wanted to just from my background, I think networking with Americans is really interesting, because if you take the 180-degree different groups, like you take a group of Americans, a group of Germans, the way they network. So Germans just don't network. It's like it's not in their blood. And I can say that because I've experienced it, and that's just how it is, you know. So, but what's so interesting is so as you move along the coast to the West Coast, that need to network and the ability to network gets even more pronounced. And the thing that I just found fascinating is, let's say you go to a trade show, and at the trade show you've got a booth and you've got competitors, okay? So it's standard. I know in England, in France, in Germany, if you've got your booth and a competitor comes along, you just, you know, what's the competitor doing here? What the hell is going on? I'm not going to talk to him, because if I talk to him, he'll find out what we're doing. So in the US, that's much more relaxed. Like people just talk to their competitors. And in Silicon Valley, it's amazing, because it's, you know, everybody just interacts, and you act kind of cocky and confident, but you just assume that, hey, you know, we're going through some shit here, and I'll just share it with you, and you know, this is what it is. And I just think it's amazing that you can talk to competitors of, you know, within your industry, and you can be fairly open, because at the end of the day, you just assume, hey, you know, if we share something, we'll all learn something in the end. And you might become best friends with one of your competitors and be able to call them here and then and say, hey, oh, we just saw you guys came out with this product, you know, what's going on there? And he'll just explain it to you, and it's like, okay, cool. Now we know we're not heading down that direction, but it's an amazing, it's just a crazy openness. I mean, the American market is aggressive, but it's got this wild openness to it, which I really, really appreciate. So the final thing I'd like to point out is, I know I've said, you know, don't depend on the internet that much, you know, do things in real time, meet people, you know, don't ignore that component. But there's so much you can do with the internet as well, especially if you're, you know, 5,000 miles away from your market in the US, for example. There's so much competitive intelligence you can do, just using SEMrush, using SpyFu, using all these kinds of software to learn about your competitors. I mean, I'd love to, maybe we can do a competitive intelligence component, because there's all the stuff you can do from, you know, wherever in the world to determine what your market is, what it should be. And then the thing I always push is start with some paid search campaigns, because you can do all this testing. You can basically test, the way I put it is, you're basically testing the language of your prospects. So you're trying to figure out, what language are they using? What language do I need to start to use on my website to communicate with them? And with paid search, you know, even just Google Ads, you know, some industries you can use Bing very effectively. Seriously, Bing, right? Inexpensive, but you just get so much information, so much data that you can gather. You know, you can gather in the Algarve, have all this information, and then you can decide how to launch, you know, 6 months later, and just be much more solid because of that information. So that's what I wanted to share.
So I've added to our mind map. So do a competitive intelligence audit report. Look into your competitors, see how they're positioning themselves, and I think that's super good advice. And you will if you accept when you visit us in the Algarve pretty soon, we'll do it at university, hybrid kind of way. So half virtually and some people potentially in room. I think we will still be in that situation, but it would be my pleasure and hopefully to the rest of the Algarve crowd to hear you talk about it. It's a topic that I know you've been also specializing quite a lot. So and I think it's super appropriate to the topic that we've been talking here. So if there's no other questions, we could broadcast this comment to Algarve. If there's no other questions, I will like to thank you very much. Say thanks so much, Andreas. You are awesome, dear friend. Tommy as well. This will be recorded, so hopefully you will be able to hear these words. And to everyone that's been here listening and enduring through this hectic time of workshops and webinars everywhere. So thanks so much, and I would like also to say on behalf of Algarve Tech Hub and especially Algarve STP, that's the promoter of this event, thank you so much for giving us the empowerment and organizing this type of things, and we'll be together pretty soon, all of us. Andreas, thank you everyone here. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Miguel. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye.
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 Vai. Samantha, pode parar a gravação.